hardest as you can and finish the sentence. And you can go along with me. Hold on. Hold on before you guys get started. It's all right. I'm all right. I was shuffling. I was shuffling. How many of you guys know this dude?
I do.
Oh, I
It
know.
came out of Spy Kids.
Oh yeah. Oh my god.
You guys know who Danny Trejo is?
What's his name like in movies?
Machete.
Yeah.
That's Danny Trejo.
Yeah, that's crazy. You met him?
Oh yeah, we kicked it. This is where I actually met him. The first time I met him was here at the drug court graduation in Visalia, and that's Judge Roper. And I actually sat at their table for dinner and got to know him. Like my story, he didn't remove the tax, but he was in prison. Then he ended up realizing without drugs and alcohol, that's all he needed to change, and he's been out. And then he tells the story of how he got into movies. And so I just wanted to share those pictures with him. And so when I was having dinner with him, he told me when I went to a training, I was going to go to a training 2 months later in Burbank in Hollywood. And he said, dude, I live like an hour from there. I don't mind going over there. And so then later on, his agent, I got his agent's number, Gloria, she called me and said, hey, Mr. Trejo said that he's actually going to be speaking at the event because you're on the calendar. He was going to meet you for lunch. And I was just like, oh, that's great. So then he ended up speaking at the event, the training that I went to for my drug and alcohol thing. And the whole thing was me and him were going to get together because I wrote a poem. It's Cinco de Mayo, and it's about the Cinco de Mayo from what I studied about it. And he actually signed it for me, and I have it framed in my office. And I'll tell you a story really quick, is he got out of prison in 1968. Out of that prison I showed you, Folsom, that's the prison he paroled from. In 1968, like I was 2 years old when he paroled from prison. And he got out, that was the last time he was locked up. And so he just had odds and ends jobs, got off parole, then he started a lawn care business because he thought that's all he could do. Like me, I thought all I could do was construction. This is the stuff we were talking about at dinner that we hit it off pretty cool. And so he said he started going to NA meetings to get clean and sober because he was also a heroin addict. And in his documentary, like I said, it's like 30, 40 minutes long. He shows all the pictures like I show you, but he shows of his uncles and people who raised him. So he talks about going to NA meetings and that he was at an NA meeting once and that this young white dude walks up to him afterwards and he's like, Mr. Trejo. He wasn't an actor or anything then. He just had a lawn business, had been out of prison like 4 years off parole. And he says, would you be my sponsor? And pretty much when you're getting clean and sober and you go to Alcoholics Anonymous or you go to Narcotics Anonymous or Gamblers Anonymous or Gaming Anonymous, Black Ops 55 prestigious, 10 each, something. Anyway, so yeah. So he says, when you go to these 12-step meetings, you're supposed to get like a mentor, like a tutor, like somebody who's been clean and sober over 3 years, and he's doing good. When you first come in, that's who you want to like connect with and say, hey, can you help me? And so he says this young white dude comes up to him, and he looks at him, and he's like, the first thought I had was like, I'm going to just talk to him outside of the meeting and take that Rolex watch he's wearing. And like he goes, that's what I really thought, like, you know, because I have those thoughts still when I see stuff. Sometimes it's like, no, don't do it. No, you will get caught. But he says he had that thought, and so he goes, yeah, man, gave him his number. Remember, he's not famous or anything yet. He has a lawn business, mowing lawns. This kid asked him. So he says, like a few weeks later, he's watching Johnny Carson, which would not today be the Jimmy Kimmel show, one of those late shows, on TV, and that the young guy calls him and says, hey, Mr. Trejo, Danny, can you come to my work? There's a lot of drugs here, and I've been clean over a month, and I don't want to use. And he says, Danny says, I didn't want to go. I was already in bed, but I have to remember when I got clean and sober, the people that took me to get my driver's license, that would take me to meetings, that, you know, gave me money, you know, like to buy my first lawnmower and blower. Like, he had to remember all the people that he met in the program to help him get started. He goes, so I just said, like, yeah, I'll be there. Give me the address. And back then, there was no Google Maps. You actually had to friggin' find it on a map. But he said he got there and he was like tripping out because the closer he got there, it was like warehouses and darker. Like, and when he got there, like he pulled up and that there was like a security guard outside and he's just like, hey, this dude called me. He says he works here. He's like, oh yeah, he's inside. And he goes like, what's inside? He goes, they're making a movie. And he's just like, all right. He goes, yeah, just park right there. So Danny says he went in there and this dude was a co-director. This young dude, his dad's a director, and in the documentary, his dad's on the documentary. Because Danny helped keep that director's thing clean. But he went there and they were filming this movie called Runaway Train. And you can Google Runaway Train, and that was the first movie he came out, and he was a boxer. And he's in prison. It's a prison movie, and he's boxing. And he said when he walked in, the director, the main director, they had all these guys with tattoos drawn on them, trying to act all hard like a prison movie. They were shooting a scene, and then he just comes in, and he looks around, and the director goes, hey, you, come here. He goes, I was wearing a t-shirt. He's like, have you ever been in prison before? He's like, yeah. He goes, do you have any more tattoos? And he took off his shirt, and that's where he's got the lady with the sombrero right here. And he's like, do you want a job? And he's just like doing what? He goes, if you can just act like a convict. And he was just like his eyes get watered, and he's like, you know, God has a sense of humor. That's how my career started. I stopped being selfish, got clean and sober, was just trying to make an honest living, going to meetings, and when this kid called, I just went to help him. And because I had been in prison, I walked onto the movie set of them making a prison movie, and that's where my career started. It's a freaking amazing story. And then from there, it just took off. He became #1 convict. Any movie you wanted, the ugly, tough guy, they always hired him. And his career just took off. Then they show him like at his house now, and you know, he's got it going on, filming in Hawaii when he's filming with Harrison Ford and with Nicolas Cage. Like, he's just got Al Pacino. It's like, it's a trip, man. And I just tripped out on him. But this is Danny, the Tocayo. But he signed my poem, and he was just like, he said when I'm ready to do something with my transcripts, my books, to contact his agent, Gloria, and she'll give me some numbers, but I'm not ready for that. I like this. I want to be able to walk into a store. Poor guy, anybody who gets famous, like, here's the thing that I heard Michael Jackson say once, because he lived tortured. You know who Michael Jackson was, right?
Yeah.
He lived tortured. It's like that dude could not freaking go anywhere, he said, without people just jumping on him, wanting a piece of his hair, his clothes. He said, you spend so much of your life working as hard as you can to become famous, and then once you're famous, you spend the rest of your life hiding from people. And when he said that, I've never forgot it. And he said something like that. He's like, man, everywhere I go, it's cool, but I just can't go anywhere. Like, someone always recognizes me, and it's like, yeah, give me a word that you didn't understand. You're not used to it. That's fine. That's fine. I don't want to sit here and like tell you each word. I wanted to just see if you could use some of them, if you knew them.
Pessimist?
All right. So here's really quick. An optimist is the opposite of a pessimist. A pessimist is an opposite of an optimist. An optimist is a person that always looks on the bright side. You know what I mean? It's like you're always looking at the bright side, the good parts. A pessimist is like, all they're ever looking for is all the negative. Like, for example, you come and you tell me, and I'm a pessimist, hey, I got a job at McDonald's, man, and you know what? I'm going to be working like 30 hours a week. Yeah, and it's going to be hot in there and grease flying everywhere, and it's not going to be worth it. And watch, you're going to be tired. And I don't have a job, and I keep talking about I'm going to get a job. That's a pessimist. An optimist is, hey, I got a job at McDonald's. Like, dude, they got good benefits now, and you know what? You're building your resume. Like, try to learn as much as you can, so that way at least learn the registers and get your food handling license so you can work anywhere. Like, that's an optimist and a pessimist. Does that make sense?
The glass half full, half empty?
Yeah. Half full is an optimist. Half empty is a pessimist. You always see the bad, you always see the good. Yes?
On this paper, were we supposed to do it like what you were doing when you're like, I feel happy when, and then you told like a story?
No, you could just use a word. Like, I feel happy when I eat. I feel happy when school's over. I feel happy when it's summer. You can just write whatever. But the reason I was saying don't use the same thing twice, because I've had people who will just say, today I feel good. I feel happy when I feel good. I feel sad when I don't feel good. I feel angry when things aren't good. I feel important when it's all good. I feel confused when nothing's good. I feel loved. You know what I mean? I've had people do that, and it's not that I'm making fun of them. It's just like, that's really, and I want you guys to go beyond that. So, you know, that way, one day when you meet somebody, like when I met Mr. Trejo, I was able to have a conversation with him, and he threw some curveballs at me with some words, and I knew what they meant. Like kismet. How many of you know what kismet means? K-I-Z-M-E-T means perfect timing. So when you meet somebody and it's just like, oh man, and everybody has everything everybody needs, and you guys all show up at the same time, like, man, this is kismet. Like, we got it all. Kismet. All right. So we're good? Did everybody finish this paper? Can one person give me an example of one that they answered?
Today I feel cool.
Today I feel cool. And literally it is 20 degrees cooler. How about you? What did you put any one of these? It doesn't have to be I feel good. Did you answer any one of these?
Yeah.
All right, give me one.
I feel special when it's my birthday.
Yeah. Anyone else got one? In closing today, I'm going to tell you what my mentor and good friend of mine told me. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this guy. All right? So hold on just a second and tell me if you've ever heard of this guy. If you know who he is. That's Ramon Ayala.
Oh, yeah.
And what's Mr. Longoria doing with Ramon Ayala?
Touching on him.
Yes, but why am I touching on him?
Oh, he's scared. You're scared.
Yes!
He's nervous.
I actually worked security for Ramon Ayala, you guys. I used to work at his concerts, and he used to hire me because, oh, that's another story.
Wait, so that's your homie?
Yeah.
Are we turning these in?
And right here, he's pretty much telling me, that person right there will not stop calling me names. And I was looking at, look at my face. That one? But do you guys trip out on stuff like this? Like, what the heck hasn't Longoria done? Like, this dude, like...
I feel like you've done everything.
And you know what the beauty of it is I just keep it on the DL. Just students who have been in my groups know who I am and what I've done. All right, so today we went over coping skills, the Today I Feel using the emotional guidance scale. And, you know, from here's where I can determine, a lot of times from here's where I can determine as far as their verbiage, as far as their, not IQ, because that has nothing to do with it, but their interpersonal communication skills. Because it doesn't matter if they're 6th graders or they're 12th graders. I've even done some of these at Fresno State and at Stanislaus State, where I went and spoke to students who are obviously high school graduates. And they are also telling me that they're very familiar and they only have 3 emotions. I'm happy, I'm angry, or I'm bored. And you know, it's like when you get the emotional scale with the 22 by Abraham and Hicks emotional scale, I highly recommend that you look at this and you just help the people who you're working with. They don't necessarily have to be adolescents, they don't have to be young adults, just anybody in general that just hasn't had the privilege of learning how to articulate their emotions. And I am so glad that they said what is optimism, because you know, it's hit or miss. Sometimes it's just a little too embarrassing and they don't want to mispronounce the word, and so they won't. But I gotta tell you, man, this group is just amazing. And you'll hear them laughing and they're participating and they're interacting, and hopefully you've seen it group by group by group how it gets better and better. I just when I show them these pictures of all the different people that I know and the things I do, it happens gradually, you know, and they just seem to somehow feel like they're meeting somebody who is, I don't know, well known or knows a lot of famous people. I don't know, but it doesn't feel selfish. It feels good, because then when they come back like more amenable. Like, man, this guy was a bodybuilder. He removed his tattoos. He survived prison and is talking about it. And I haven't got to that point yet, but eventually we're at group 5. Within the next 3 groups, I'm going to eventually tell them the part of what happened. When did the epiphany hit me? When did that moment of clarity come when I got away from games? When I made a conscious decision to just get out and never go back. And I'll tell them that in the next 3 groups or so. But, you know, I've overcome so much that it's hard to measure, really. The people that I've known, the people that I've worked with, you know, agents' numbers, people's phone numbers that I have, people that I've associated with and socialized with. And I'm not just talking about celebrities or politicians. I'm talking about students that no one gave them a chance, and I've been to their graduations 4 years later, 3 years later. Some of them are 5th-year seniors, but I've been to their graduation. And, you know, that's, to me, those are the most important people to meet. I mean, come on, you know? Those are stories in the making. These people already have a legacy, but these are stories in the making. Like, how many people have I met in, you know, I have over 18,000 clinical hours. Pretty much that's over 18,000 hours of groups and individuals and co-facilitating with everything. Parents, grieving parents, children, grieving children, adolescents, people just getting out of prison. I went and talked in prison. I went and talked at the Youth Authority, now known as the Juvenile Justice Department of Juvenile Justice, DJJ. So I've talked to people freshly out, still in, have changed their lives, people that are on the verge of going into that life, and it's just amazing. I meet so many people, that's it. I meet so many people in the making, and to me, I believe that that working with people who are still in the making, to me, keeps me being in the making. People are, keeping the fire lit inside of you. You don't need anybody to light a fire under you, man. You don't. Right now I'm in the middle of listening to Dr. Daniel Goldman talk about social autism, and he's breaking it down, guys, like awesome. He's breaking it down. Dr. Daniel Goldman is the one who coined the phrase emotional intelligence, EQ, your emotional quotient, social intelligence, SQ, your social quotient, which is, of course, they're variables of IQ, your intelligence quotient. And now he's working on social autism, and I can't get enough of it. It's an 1.5 hour long interview, and he's explaining how children that are now being born into a world where they've never lived without a device are not learning how to communicate through actions. They're not learning any nonverbal communication. Like, they're not learning how to pick up on when somebody's saying, like, well, it was great to see you, they still want to keep talking, or they don't know how to pick up on cues, because the devices, they're not learning from their parents what's good, what's bad, what's happy, what's sad, because it's just devices and devices. So they're losing all of that. And I spoke a little bit about it last time, and it's called your subcortical is being developed, your fight or flight, but your neocortex, where you're able to really think things through. The best way I can explain it, I guess, is the best way I would explain it is, here's stimuli and here's response. And from the age of 3 on, all you've been doing is had a device in your hand, and you've missed all these cues, and your subcortical is what's been developed, the fight or flight, not your neocortex, then there's no space. And a healthy emotional person, I believe, speaking for myself, is I needed to have a stimuli, and I needed a space between my stimuli and my response. And that space I choose to call choice. That's where choice lives. That's where stimuli, I choose how I'm going to respond. Stimuli, I choose if I'm going to say that or if I'm going to say anything. And sometimes the space is like this, and those are good days. And then sometimes the space is a little closer, and that's when I have to go back to all the things that I've learned, and I have to review and take a self-inventory and check my EQ and my SQ and find out what's going on. And I just believe a lot of the children today are missing that space, so they don't have a choice. And you know how we always say, you always have a choice. Dr. Goldman, he's talking about not if you're 3 years old with a device in your hand and you're not learning how to communicate. There is no space between stimuli and response, that space known as choice. There just isn't. So it's really interesting. So I just can't wait to get in the car and drive home. I'll hear it 6 times so I can get all of the nuances of what he's saying and all the details. I memorize a lot when I hear it in the audio. So I guess I'm a kinesthetic learner is what it's called. I mean, I can learn in all 3 fashions, which is, God, I can't think right now, but I think kinesthetic. Anyway, if you're watching this, you know the 3 ways that you learn, but I think I learn better through audio. I memorize more than from reading it. And so, anyway, thanks for being with us today.